All right. Well, welcome to the International Code Council's Region 1 platform. We are broadcasting live on Facebook. This will later be included on our podcast platform, the ICC Region 1 Radio. So if you miss anything, as we talk with Cecilia today, please make sure you can check that out on that platform or on YouTube. We are on YouTube as well. So thank you. Welcome. Welcome to Region 1. Region 1 was established in 2014, and we're made up of 3 states, California, Hawaii, and Nevada. This includes 32 ICC chapters. We're dedicated to excellence in education and engagement to promote a safer environment by bringing individuals like myself and Cecilia together to have a conversation. This discussion forum was designed to highlight individuals in the various chapters that make up our region and really just the kind of the region as a whole. Today we have Cecilia Muela, right? Did I get that right? All right. Yes, I feel good about myself now. The Assistant Chief Building Official for the City of Santa Rosa. I want to thank everyone for joining us. If you have any questions for Cecilia, please feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll be checking the chat as we go. It'll be a kind of an engaging conversation. It'll be a back and forth. So if you have any questions or comments for Cecilia, please make sure to leave them in the chat, and we will go from there. Cecilia, welcome. We talked briefly before we started. You're up in the great state of Washington. I've been there a couple times. Definitely love it. We talked about the weather. It's definitely probably beautiful up there.
Gorgeous. It's a great day out here. I'm excited. It's my first time, so I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So I'm excited to be here.
Well, fantastic. Well, I do appreciate you taking the time, especially in your busy schedule. You are very, very, very busy, probably more so than I am these days. But I'm sure we all have things going on, especially with the ICC conference coming up. The annual conference is coming up this week. I'm sure you and I will probably see each other up there. So very excited. You are not too far away from me. You're in the city of Santa Rosa. I'm in the city of Tracy. So we're fairly close. Within a day's drive anyway. Yeah. So
that's right.
Well, as we begin, I was hoping maybe you could share with everybody that's on our platform today your background and really the agency that you serve.
Absolutely. So I've been in the building industry for just over 20 years. With a direct focus in code enforcement for about 14 plus years. I started off almost right out of high school, and loved the profession. In fact, wanted to be a building inspector, landed in code, and here I am. So currently I am with the City of Santa Rosa. Prior to the City of Santa Rosa, I was at the City of Oakland for a few years, a little closer to you, just a smidgen. But nonetheless, I oversee, as the assistant building official, I oversee the code enforcement unit, as well as our permit technicians and our neighborhood revitalization program. And of course, I serve as backup to the chief building official in his absence. So lots of moving parts, but nonetheless, a really rewarding job. And like I said, because my focus has been in code enforcement for so many years, I am excited for the new adventure that this new job brings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it sounds like you've kind of really made a transition maybe from that major metropolitan area to, and Santa Rosa is not a small city. It's still a pretty good sized city. So I'm sure you've probably seen a lot throughout your career. And as we take a look at that, we all take, different paths. You mentioned that you really almost started out of high school, but can you think of any notable experiences that you've had that really have shaped your perspective in the prevention after 20 years? I've got about the same. I didn't maybe start as early as you did, but there are definitely some things that I think of in the back of my mind that really have kind of helped shape me as a fire code official. I think everything really does, but I think I can think of different fires that I've been on. I can think of different code enforcement cases that I've been on that have really kind of shaped me to be the code official I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Tim, when I started out, I wanted to be a building inspector. And one of the pivotal moments in that initial decision was a woman inspector by the name of Diane Brown, who's a really great friend of mine. She inspired me to want to know a little bit more about building inspection, and she kind of took me under her wing and showed me the way. But then I landed in code enforcement because of budgetary constraints, and
Hmm.
the position was in code. And it wasn't necessarily what I had planned for myself. However, diving into code and really learning how diverse it is as far as the many hats that we wear, the service that we provide the community, just really spoke to me. And
Hmm.
because of that, I took a direct liking, passion, to the job really, because it's so rewarding for me. And I think that going back to some of the initial cases that I had, I remember coming across families living in substandard housing, and being able to get those particular units, up to housing standards alone, having the children even thank you and say, gosh, look at my pretty house or my pretty
Yeah.
unit or apartment. That to me, I think felt like I had just won the lottery. And
Yeah.
so because of it, I kept on with code enforcement. Obviously, I haven't left. I still oversee it and I have a real direct care for it. I think it's so instrumental being a part of our community and really kind of getting immersed and focusing on how we can provide assistance and really help grow the
Hmm.
good, healthy housing stock. So for me, it's always been that community engagement, the community give back, the fact that it feels really great to be an instrumental, paramount part of your community is what did it for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that all code officials, one of the things that I really try to pride myself in, and I'm sure it sounds like you do as well, based on that, that description, is being empathetic, and really kind of trying to put yourself in their position as it relates to maybe the conditions that they're living in, and especially as a fire investigator, also being able to kind of do those same things. Yeah, that empathy I think is key, and as you mentioned, providing support, and trying to really make the situation better, and being really that vehicle of change, I think is definitely one of those good things that as code officials we are. Because if it wasn't for us, then many times these things wouldn't change. And it's all about perspective, right? I don't think that a lot of times people are doing it maliciously, but it also too I'm sure you probably have heard. I've walked past it a million times and never thought it was a problem. I'm sure in code enforcement it may be a little bit different than fire code enforcement as it relates into that regard. But I do think that those are some of those things that perspective is key as we take a look at it. Now, one of the things you talked about was mentorship. It sounds like you had a mentor that really kind of took you under their wing. So somebody that's been in the profession for 20 years, how do you mentor new people coming into the field, and how do you maybe, I don't want to say recruit, but recruit's probably the best word for it, bring new young people into our profession, because that is one of the things that I think that we're missing so much right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. In fact, mentorship for me is pivotal. It really is, especially in our respective professions,
Hmm.
Tim, because as you know, right now we are lacking to some extent, that new generation of fire marshals, fire inspectors, code inspectors, if you will. Um, because I was given the opportunity of mentorship, I saw the direct impact that it had on me. And the fact that it fueled my fire, it was a motivating factor to continue on and want to grow and get to this point. So, for example, starting off as a telephone operator, moving to today as an assistant chief building official is a great accomplishment. And
Hmm.
because I've had that mentorship, for me, it's been important to pay it forward. So being able to create those platforms for up and coming code officials, the new generation of recruits, as you say, because that really is actually
Yeah.
the best one to use, is so essential. It really is. I know that in the last year, I worked really hard at putting together the Women Leaders in Code Enforcement Symposium. And that has been a project of mine that I've worked on for probably about 4 to 5 years. I started off with an idea actually over a cup of coffee. I was sitting there and I was like, what can I get myself into? I know what I needed.
Right, right.
I know what I was lacking, and I know how good it felt to have that support, from Diane and other mentors as I was going
Hmm.
through. And most significantly, I attended the ABM in 2019 and under the board shadow program. And Chris Bridges, as you know, board of director for ICC, took me under his wing and he brought me into ABM, and I was like a kid at a candy store. I
I'm
was like,
sure.
wow.
Yeah.
I was thoroughly impressed, and just watching everybody interact and everybody just, really come together, and it was a true family, and everybody was just kind of rooting for the success of each other.
Hmm.
So for me, it just solidified, you know what? You have this idea of creating a platform for up and coming code professionals. Let's do it. Because if not now, when? So I went ahead and put it together. We had our first Women Leaders in Code Enforcement Symposium, March 2021. We had over 250 attendees from across the nation. Um,
Wow.
yes, of all walks of life. It was so amazing to see, the outpour of interest. But you know what was clear, Tim? The direct need for mentorship. And
Yeah.
I think that for me, that then solidified, okay, we're on the right track. So going back to the mentorship component, so essential, so instrumental. And I think for me, being able to give back and assist and provide feedback and encouragement and even paths, to get through, getting certified and growing
Hmm.
professionally, is so paramount to be able to promote our up and coming code professionals.
Wow. So was the first symposium in March of this last year?
Actually, it was March of this year,
This year,
2021.
sorry. Yeah, so this past March. And so did
Yeah,
you do it all virtually or was this an in-person conference or
this was all virtual,
okay.
all virtual. And, as you know, with the challenges surrounding COVID, I was planning on a 2020 conference live
Uh-huh.
in Southern California, and COVID hit, and of course, our rules changed.
Yep.
And so I thought, okay, great. I can't have it, this year. So instead of putting it off for another year, we're going to go ahead and pivot and see how we can make it happen.
Hmm.
So we were able to bring it forth on a virtual platform, not knowing how much response we would get, really taking a chance. Was able to get some amazing, amazing leaders on board and awesome colleagues that were able to come together and assist. And so we were pleasantly surprised to see that, we had, the outpour of interest, and it went for about 2 days.
Oh,
Great
wow.
courses. Yeah, and out of that, we developed more mentorship opportunities. So a lot of the speakers that were there now have folks that they're mentoring. In addition to me, I have mentees who I like to call friends.
Right. Yep.
We're learning, we're growing, we're supporting, we're getting them where they need to be. And that really was what it was meant for, is being able to have a resource to get them where they need to be.
That's a fantastic idea. I think that a lot of us are missing that. I know that when I came up, when I first started my career, I did have a mentor, and to this day, I really consider him a friend of mine, and he's since retired, but I know that he and I, especially when he was in the field, we shared a lot of information. It was one of those things. If I ever had a question, I know I could go to him, and I, since moving, so I've kind of had that transition. I started in the Midwest. I went to Colorado. Now I'm in California. I've been in California now for 5 years, and along the way, I was able to develop friendships and really mentorships, and have like the lifeline or the phone a friend. in those difficult situations. And even being here, I know that I can, and probably he may agree or disagree, but I know I can pick up the phone and call Robert Marshall over in San Mateo Consolidated, or I can call maybe my friend Tracy Dutter in Contra Costa County, or those types of people that are definitely, people that may have the knowledge that I don't, or address that situation that I haven't. And I think that that's key because, we're all trying to find the answers. We all don't have the answers, and how do we get there? And how do we really grow as that code official, through our through that process? One of the questions that I had on that conference was, you said you're really planning it for 4 to 5 years. That seems to be a major undertaking in planning. And you mentioned you were going to have it in Southern California. So can you kind of, I mean, for me, I'm just fascinated by it. Can you kind of walk through that type of, from conception to implementation, kind of those, maybe some of the challenges that you faced and some of the things, successes, and how you were able to really get it going?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started off, like I said, I was at a coffee shop. I was thinking about how I could give back, what I could do extra to give back to the community of our building professionals, right? And so, I'm really big on notepads and taking notes. And anytime I had, and I jotted down. And so I started to kind of plan on what I wanted to accomplish. How is this going to look? What kind of content do I want to have available for the attendees? Is it going to be relevant content? And what is my end goal? And like you said, Tim, the end goal was the mentorship, but also being resourceful, like you mentioned, being able to create that networking base where someone can just call and check in with someone about a process. So started off, with the courses I wanted to offer. It was just me. So can you
Right.
imagine planning a conference on your own and really trying to figure out who your speakers are going to be and what information is going to work. And so just having conversations and connecting with individuals. And I'm not a shy person, Tim. If I saw you at ABM without even today knowing you, I'd be like, hey, how are you? What's your name? And I wasn't always that way, but I think what happened was in this industry, you have to be able to do those things. You have to be able to come out of your shell and really be able to connect. And so being able to connect with, different professionals, even on LinkedIn, being able to kind of get to know who they were, having those conversations, putting the idea forward to them. Hey, would this interest you? How would you feel? If you had an opportunity to attend, what would that look like for you? So it was a lot of legwork and it was a lot of planning in between my schedule, right? In between trying to get everything else that I needed to get done. So when I made the decision to do it virtual, I talked to one of my colleagues, Pete Roque, and I said, "Hey, Pete, I need your assistance because you're the guru of platforms. He that's his jam. He knows it in and out." And I said, "You need to help me with this. I need to understand what is the best platform outside of Zoom where I can have an interactive
Hmm.
conference." And he said, "I recommend this, this, and this, but it's up to you to decide." So I said, "Great." So it took beta testing. It took setting up multiple meetings. It took me introducing myself to the women that I've met and really solidifying, that relationship and getting to know them, having them trust me and get to know me, because I think trust is a big key component as well.
Right.
And then being able to really grab onto the idea of what it was that I wanted. Okay, I wanted to make sure that everybody had a voice, had an opportunity to come in and chime in. And so the platform that we beta tested allowed us to do that. We could bring people on stage. Initially I thought about it as a women's conference, which is what it is,
Hmm.
but we never turned away anybody else. So we had
Okay.
men that joined us, professionals from fire, from building,
Uh-huh.
um, and they enjoyed it just as much as the women did. And so I think going back to the planification of it, really kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts of what I wanted the end result to be. So it took it a while. And at first, I must admit, Tim, that I was a little fearful. Can I really do this? Can I pull this off? Is
Right.
it, do I need anybody else? How much time is this going to take? But I think that determination is a big key component of getting it done and really coming to terms with, no, I'm doing this. We're going to
Right.
do it. We're going to get it done. And I think that that's what really pushed me forward to make sure that we got it done.
Yeah, and I kind of laughed when you said that you would come up to me at a conference and introduce yourself and say hello. I think well, I don't say all. I think a lot of us code professionals are definitely extroverts, and it's very refreshing to hear your passion, because I think that that's one of those things that you really did not take no for an answer. It was going to happen. You may have had some doubts, but it seemed like those doubts were very momentary. And it's very refreshing to see that, and see people, leaders as yourself, really engage and have an idea and really take that concept and implement it. And having 200 people for the first conference is outstanding. I applaud you for that. I think that I was doing well on these videos. I have never had any platform like that, so that's amazing. I'll be honest, I'm probably gonna have to check out the 2022 conference. So please send me an invite, because
Oh,
I will try to
absolutely.
attend. I know that and if there's anything I can ever do to help anybody in the fire field, I'm always for it. Um, so, you've been in the industry for a long time. You've seen a lot of changes. What are some of those big changes that you've seen? As you talked about talking with, Pete Roquet and trying to develop platforms. I think that that's one of the things, especially in COVID, that we've seen, some of those changes and some of those impacts into what we do. But what types of changes have you seen, going from Oakland to Santa Rosa in over almost 20 years?
Yeah, a lot of the change that I've seen is in technology and procedures. I
Hmm.
think that we're creatures of habit, right?
Yeah.
So, that whole mindset of, well, we've done it this way for 20 years.
Right.
And I tend to think, great, and that was amazing, but let's change it up for the next 20.
Yep.
Let's be innovative, right? Not necessarily reinvent the wheel, but be innovative. And I think what we really learned from COVID and throughout the years in this industry is that we can change and we can make positive change. And I think COVID really threw us into that whole figure it out,
Hmm.
see how this is going to work for you now. And so, one of the things that I've seen change that I think is amazing is the support, the community support of building professionals in this industry, fire, building, anybody in the building industry, really being able to have each other's back as far as being resourceful. Back in our day, Tim, you went to the website, got your books, and studied on your own, maybe, or took a class at a college, or maybe picked the brains of people in your office. And now it's like, hey, log on. Hey, I have a class. Hey, what do you need? Let me talk to you. Spend 30 minutes with you about, decks or roofing or fire suppression systems, whatever it may be. And I think that that change alone, the camaraderie, the family aspect of those that are in the building industry really grew stronger. It really did. And now, in this day and age, really having these platforms, Tim, which I think what you're doing is great because it hasn't really been done. And a lot of us have focused on, well, if we can't meet in person, let's bring that meeting to them.
Right.
Let's see how we can establish a town hall. Let's see how we can establish a meeting on COVID procedures. How are you
Hmm.
handling it? Or just even a mental health check-in. Hey, code peeps, how are you feeling? Are you okay? Are you good? What do you need? Just having that platform to do so, I think, has been one of the most instrumental changes. And the ELMC, I think, is one of the biggest ones too. So when I knew of ICC, I knew a lot of the code stuff, right? I knew where to
Hmm.
find my code books, I knew where to find
Yep.
my certifications and some classes. But I wasn't really versed on the different committees, the different councils that
Right.
ICC has.
Hmm.
And so part of that board shadow program, I think, was one of the essential things, the most pivotal things as well in my career that really allowed me to understand what it was all about. So the Emerging Leaders Membership Council, which I'm a part of, I show up as, a volunteer member. I chime into the meetings. Just seeing what they were doing, again, it just does something to you as far as your own motivation, right? You're like, gosh, this is so great. So, having the ability to have those resources, I think, has been one of the most instrumental changes in our profession, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that, as you mentioned, taking, having town halls or being able to take the meeting to other people, because without these platforms, you and I may have not ever been able to have this conversation. And I've had conversations with, a lot of people from really across California, Nevada, and then also I spoke with Chief Todd with Hawaii County. I know of Chief Todd. Him and I had been to a class or two together at the National Fire Academy. But also too, I've met his fire marshal in that process, and so being able to have these platforms is definitely, I think, for some of those negative things that COVID is responsible for, there are a lot of positive things that. And I think that, as code officials, we're always resourceful. We always try to find a way, because we have to. You mentioned, coming in and changing things for the next 20 years. I think people forget that, really, as code officials, we're change agents. It's not the status quo. I remember when I first started, I had somebody tell me that's the way we've done it. That's the way we're always going to continue to do it. And don't ask that question again. And that didn't sit well with me, obviously. And so, since that, and I will always remember that, is that it's, the fact is that you should always be reviewing, and I'm sure as you, I'm always open to change. If it's not working, we need to fix it to be able to move forward. So,
Absolutely.
one of the questions, and I know that you are very active on LinkedIn. You are much better at it than I am. I'm going to tell you that because I see your things pop up, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you, because you are very active and you engage a lot, and that is fantastic because the things you post are fantastic. I get a lot of value out of that.
Thank you.
But I noticed that we talked about you being in Washington today at the Code Enforcement Association's conference. As somebody that really values continued education for code enforcement professionals, can you discuss your work as a trainer educator, and also too, what skills, from that perspective, do you think that are undervalued that maybe more of us should focus on?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Tim, I never in a million years would have ever thought that I would be a presenter, or a trainer, if you will. In fact, I never thought that I would be an ICC trainer for that matter, and that I'd get to travel and meet awesome, building industry people. But I think what's really important with training is really sharing with folks, kind of the tools of the trade, what you've learned. We learn from mistakes, from experience. We learn the right way. We ask all the questions. And I think with being able to provide substantial training that really gets down to the nitty-gritty of what we want to accomplish is so paramount. I think for those that are looking into becoming presenters, really digging deep into where your passion lies, right? For example, Tim, you might know everything about fire suppression. I don't, but I know that I would take a Tim class if I needed it because I learned
Right.
from you, right?
Yep.
Whereas with me, there's certain subject matter expert areas that I thrive in, that I feel like I need to get this message out. It's important. Here are some ways, and that's not to say that whatever we teach is the way and the only way, but it's an option, right? It gives
Right.
our attendees an opportunity to develop their own way, and it gives an opportunity to show a different perspective. So really fine-tuning our skill set, being able to get to the point where you can present before a crowd. I know for those of us that present, Tim, as you know, the first time you go before a crowd, you're like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I hope it works out. But you know what? You develop your style, and you learn a lot of that style from your personal experience on the job. How you interact with people, how you get to know or when it's time to pivot on a certain code. And again, just really being able to understand the makeup of what your profession is, whether it's fire, code, or building, and really diving into that. So for me, I think the importance of being a presenter is something that, it's really paramount for me, for my colleagues, for my employees. And at the same time, it's that give back aspect of being able to share the wealth, if you will, the wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely. I think that I think that we all need to be educators of the next generation. We talked about mentorship, but I also do think that being somebody that's an educator is extremely important. Because if they don't know how to do it, and you do, I mean, I think that that's kind of maybe a failure on our part if we don't share that knowledge. And that was probably one of the things that I valued the most as I was kind of coming up in the code enforcement profession, was being a field training officer, somebody that could take somebody underneath my wing, and that really helped develop that mentorship. And walk them through just some of those experiences that I had, and some of those things that I had learned throughout time. I remember when I first started, and I hate to admit it, but so when I began in fire code enforcement, I was a deputy state fire marshal, and we went through the same police academy that like your state patrol, narcotics enforcement, and criminal investigation. So when I got out of the academy, I knew how to be a cop. I did not know how to be a code enforcement professional. And so I remember I was at a school inspection, and I was looking for the very first time at a sprinkler inspection report, and I had no clue what it was. I mean, I knew what it was. I just didn't really know what I was looking at to be able to pull the information to be effective. And so from that day, I always strive to say, I know that I need to be better. I know that I need to go to classes. I need to, I was really, lack of a better phrase, drinking from a fire hose to try to get that information, so that way I could be better at what I was doing. What are some of those skills that you find undervalued? I know that you mentioned earlier about the mental health checkup. And I think that that's one of the things that I think gets missed for code enforcement professionals. I think that we are under a lot of stress, anywhere from building, fire, and code enforcement. There is a lot of stress associated with what we do, because it is a big responsibility. And so that is one area that I think that we miss out on, and that we need to come up with some different some ways to be able to kind of instruct and be able to help people out. So what are some of those undervalued skills that you think that maybe as we start to look at that, as we start to look at the future, that we can maybe kind of enforce or not enforce, that's probably not the best word, but maybe promote as we move forward?
Yeah, no, lots of great things. So the first thing is, a lot of the time with our job, as you know, Tim, when we start, a lot of the reasoning behind what we do is to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the constituents that we serve.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily think about it in the context of safeguarding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Promoting the health, safety, and welfare of the people doing the job,
Right.
where they're at, what they need. And I think that is the piece that sometimes is undervalued. You're a great inspector, you're knocking it out of the ballpark, you're doing great, but we're not asking the questions, the important questions. Is there anything I could do for you?
Mm-hmm.
How's it going? How can I assist you? Do you have career goals? If so, what are they? Can I assist you to get where you need to be? Can I provide you some recommendations as far as what type of training you may want to take and focus on? Going back to being a presenter, a lot of what makes us great presenters is understanding the things that we didn't know that
Mm-hmm.
we needed to learn. And then
Yeah.
also being able to apply that to the folks that may need that, because guess what? We were there one day. So I think that, really looking at your high performers, not so much as, the person that I'm going to hand another 50 cases to, but looking at what fuels their fire, understanding whether or not they're being challenged. And if they're not, we don't want them to become stagnant or demoralized or not wanting to grow. We want to be able to feed into that drive that they have. But also, it goes back to even looking at your senior office assistant or your office assistant or your technician or your code officer and asking them those questions. Hey, what are your career goals? Where do you see yourself? In fact, when I started my new position, that's the one thing that was important for me to know about my new staff is tell me a little bit about yourself. Where are you? Where do you see yourself as part of this unit? And where do you see yourself in a year or 5 years? How can I assist you? How can we assist you in getting there? Because I think that when you're able to provide those resources, those tools, that support, and not just drive them to the ground, right? Because
Right.
they're great
Yep.
workers, but really being able to feed into them and pour into them, it really does things to how they feel truly being a part of that team. And so it's important for us to, you know, check in on them, make sure they're doing okay, and also make sure that we're understanding what their goals and aspirations are so that we can get them on the right path.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you hit on a very key concept, leadership, and the different things, and really checking in with your staff to see what they need from you. Because a lot of times I really find myself always asking, delegating is maybe probably the way to describe it, different tasks, because I know, this person has the availability or the skill set to be able to take care of that. And I think that that's one of that, at least that reciprocal approach is what can I do to help you be able to further your career aspirations? I know one of the things that I've implemented with my staff, and really it's only been the last several months, but more like weekly one-on-one check-ins, to sit down and have those conversations, and really kind of see how things are going, professionally, so that way we can ensure that we're doing what we can, and I really think it's provided me a good opportunity to know what's going on, because a lot of times you're looking at it from a 30,000-foot view. You may not see the day to day, and so it's always good to be able to kind of touch base with them. And I actually, that was one of the things that I learned from Michael O'Brien he's a fire chief in Michigan, and he taught at the California Fire Prevention Officers Symposium, and that was one of the suggestions. I thought that's a fantastic idea. I've never thought about that, and from that day we started doing one-on-ones, and I really think that it's provided a much bigger value to just our division, and it sounds like you do something very similar.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you'd be surprised what you'll learn, right?
yeah.
From your employees, what you get to know. And I think that sometimes we get so busy and wrapped up with the day-to-day that we start kind of neglecting that
Hmm.
support, right?
Yep.
Because in our minds, we're thinking they're getting it done, they're getting the job done, no worries. And the only time we're really focused on something is when there's a complaint about something.
Yep.
But really going in there and saying, hey, how are you? Good morning, even a good morning or a good afternoon, or hey, checking in on you. Like you said, the weekly meetings, it just really, puts a finger, on the pulse of what's going on.
Hmm.
How can I assist? How can we help? Or, learning more about what drives them. And you know what? Even going as far as understanding someone that perhaps isn't being challenged, right?
Yeah.
But you
Yep.
wouldn't know it unless you're
Yeah.
asking.
Yep.
So, really being able to understand, well, what is it that you want to do? Right?
Yeah.
How can I get you to where you need to be? So it's important to really have those solidified relationships with staff.
Yeah, and I think that I consider, the different types of leadership styles. I think is to really rely on one. I don't think that we do. I do think that it's more of a servant type or a servant type relationship that we need to have from time to time, to be able to see what they need from us to be able to grow and develop as code enforcement professionals. So yeah, I think that that's outstanding. I think that we need to do more of it. And even though I do it once a week, I definitely know that I need to do it more often than what I probably do. So I need to keep working on it. I'm a work in progress, just like we all are. So,
Right,
um,
exactly.
Code enforcement's the sum of many parts. We've kind of talked about this a little bit, but how, being, maybe we'll put on your hat as the assistant city chief building official for Santa Rosa. How do you develop partnerships and relationships with maybe people outside your division? Sometimes it's like I've been in organizations where it's the building department's over here, the fire department's over here, and there's not a lot of talking going on. So how do you try to bridge that gap? Also, code enforcement is one of those things. I think that we all need to, sometimes you all just have to get in a room and have a discussion. So how do you bridge that gap?
Exactly that way. Get in a room and have a discussion. And that's actually really key, Tim, because you're so right. We tend to operate in silos when
Yep.
we're so separated, right? Physically separated usually means out of mind, out of sight, or out of sight, out of mind, if you will. But what I found to be most helpful is really picking up that phone and saying, hey, my name is Cece. This is where I'm at. This is what I do. I'd like to be supportive of you. I would like the same back. Can we meet up and discuss? Can we have a meet and greet? And in fact, really setting up those meet and greets with other departments, doing a quick little, maybe 5-minute spiel or even a little 10-minute presentation on this is the areas of a focus for us. This is how you may come into play with your department, and this is how we can support each other. And really, I like to call it building your lifeline, right?
Right.
Having those direct contacts, knowing who to call, knowing that you're letting them know you'll support them, and their support is also welcome. So there are times where we may not know who to contact in PD, and there are times where maybe PD might not even know who code enforcement or what code enforcement is.
Right.
More of a reason to look at that as an educational opportunity and to be able to bridge that gap by having that meet and greet and really explaining the ins and outs of what we do. But what that really does is now you've created your network, right? Where,
Right.
if you're out there, you're like, oh, I know I can call Tim. Tim's going to tell me all about this. He's going to come out and support me, or he'll send somebody out to assist me.
Right.
And vice versa, really being able to work harmoniously with each other. Sometimes, well, when I'm teaching my classes, I usually say, who has a lifeline? And they're like, what's that? So I'll explain, it's your direct contacts. If you haven't put yourself out there, put yourself out there. Get to know those folks. Don't wait for that opportunity to come to you. Seek out that opportunity, because the better prepared you are, the better you're going to have those collaborative relationships, and the more you're going to have those collaborative relationships. So, and it's extremely paramount, especially when we have times where we do need to rely on each other. For example, disasters, fires, floods, earthquakes, any other type of emergency measure. It's the opportunity to be able to build on the resource that we can use, from each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, as you mentioned, having a lifeline is, scroll through your contacts. You have somebody in there. At least you should. I mean, I know when I first became a fire marshal, and I was in charge, I was kind of on an island because I had moved to a new state and I had absolutely no idea who anybody was around me, and I didn't know what to do. And somebody did reach out to me, and really tried to help me through that process. And it was one of those things that if it wasn't for that person, I probably would still be struggling, trying to figure it out. And so,
Right.
and I know that when I became the fire marshal here, I met a lot of people at our Fire Prevention Officers Association meetings. We used to have them in person. Maybe after January 2022, we might have them in person again. But there were a number of people that came up to me and said, "Hey, if you ever need anything, please, feel free to reach out to me. Here's my card. Let me know if you have any questions." And I will tell you, I have taken them up on most of them up on that offer, just to be able to make sure that I have, because we don't know everything, and that's the code is the code. I mean, I'm sure you can probably see the books behind me. They're all full of information that I probably, I continue to learn from every day. I learn something new every day, regardless of what it may be out of the building code, maybe out of the mechanical code. I think I had an IAPMO question that I was in the mechanical code, and I had to search for it. I mean, there's something new. No 2 days are the same. I will tell you that as a code official.
Right, this is so
um,
true.
we talked about COVID, and we talked about some of the technology changes. And one of the questions that I had is, what types of changes have you implemented within your organization that you find maybe be more efficient and effective as we continue to progress past the pandemic?
Yeah, so metrics. Metrics are
Hmm.
essential, KPIs. Being able to understand how we operate, overoperate, underoperate, it really kind of paints a picture. And I think that COVID gave us the opportunity to really hone in on what areas we are oversaturating as far as extensive amount of procedures, meaning you
Hmm.
have 20 different steps to get one thing done,
Right.
versus how efficient or inefficient we're being with the higher priority cases. So what it really helped us understand is, okay, we can turn things around and streamline and be
Hmm.
most effective by focusing on maybe priority one or two cases and developing a self-certification for the lower case priorities, the priority threes, the trash cans or the basketball hoops or, trash debris, graffiti, things that could really be self-certified where we don't necessarily have to put all our resources into that basket and
Hmm.
really refocus ourselves into the areas where we're going to be most fruitful as far as getting things done. In addition to that is really understanding our procedures. Do we need 10 different steps to gain compliance? Probably not. We
Right.
can scale that down a little bit more. Let's see how that looks. And again, having that opportunity during this COVID time has really given us, the I guess the upper hand in developing new procedures
Hmm.
and really becoming more effective. To include the training mechanism, because with the KPIs, you also understand where we're at or where staff's at, right?
Hmm.
With the learning curve, knowing what we need to do to get someone where they need to be so that, again, everyone's functioning at full capacity or trying to get them to function at full capacity, meaning they're comfortable
Right.
making a call, comfortable taking higher priority caseloads. So that's been really instrumental, as well as the technology. But before we were like, we can never do, a phone, video call. It's not going to work.
Right.
But oh, how we've learned, right?
Yep.
There
Yeah.
are mechanisms to get that done. Plan check, right? Plan check. I remember I was at a Calbo, gosh, I want to say maybe 7 to 10 years ago when we first started talking about having our plans, come in as an
Hmm.
electronic submittal. And I
Right.
remember sitting in the room, and everyone saying, "No way! How is that going to even work? How are we going to get the workflows with all the departments?" And here we are, right? Many of us are doing e-checks. And so it just really works out to be able to understand where we're, again, spending the most time and really narrowing it down to be most effective.
Yeah, you're right. I think that it's kind of, is it like the Star Trek effect or the sci-fi effect where you see something in sci-fi and over time you start to see those things kind of materialize from cell phones to the different things, and I think that we're also a victim of that, where we kind of thought about it and now we're starting to see it in practice, and I think that COVID really thrust it upon us to have to do this, and yeah, and identifying some of these technology features has definitely helped. As you mentioned, anywhere from Zoom to other platforms. Like right now, we're on a platform I had not heard of until probably 3 months ago, Blue Jeans. So another platform. There's a lot of
Right,
platforms out there.
right. I never heard of this platform, but I was looking at it and reading up on it. I'm like, that's kind of a cool thing. So,
Yeah, yeah, and I will say that as you watch the video back, what it does is it'll like focus the camera on you, and then it'll kind of minimize me, and then back and forth, and it's kind of nice. It's a much different platform, so you don't get a lot of people talking over each other, which is really nice, especially as we're doing this. Um,
That's
you mentioned metrics. One of those things that I also find of great significance, but also too, a lot of times I think it's numbers on a paper. And what I try to identify what that value is, from identifying trends in different areas, and really kind of seeing where our blind spots are. What are some of those metrics that you focus on, in your agency, that may help kind of further develop your agency as time goes on?
Yeah, I think my main focus is on response time and how much area of focus we're putting on higher level cases versus smaller level cases.
Hmm.
Being most cost effective as far as using our resources to their best of capability that we can.
Hmm.
So for example, with the COVID, a lot of departments lost staff, and
Hmm.
so some of their code staff were depleted. Some building inspection staff and even fire staff were
Yeah.
depleted, because we didn't have the resource to keep people on board because of COVID. So really kind of relearning where we were going to be able to focus to make sure that we were hitting strategic goals, response, making sure that we were getting to high priority cases and they weren't sitting there for long periods of time. But it really gave an indication as to perhaps the level of expertise of our staff and where they may need some assistance, as well as, really the overall health of our program. Are we running at full capacity? Can we, re-innovate and clear out some of the old stuff and really de-weed? So it really gave an idea, not so much on let's close all these cases or this amount of cases, no, but really focusing on the quality and effectiveness of our response.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. I like the aspect of response time. Are we responding in a timely fashion? And as COVID has shown us, a lot of us had budget impacts, where we had to freeze or hold positions. I know that I had two open positions for almost a year, to be able to get filled. And so, and having my current staff take over all of that caseload was a major undertaking, and it provided a lot of stress. We talked about kind of the mental health check-ins, but that did provide a lot of stress, and eventually, people start to get that to that point where we start to lead to burnout. And how do we avoid that? Especially for those people that are high performers, and we just don't want to keep piling things on top of them. We want to try to, be effective and efficient, but also, be respectful of the employee too. Yeah, I know my stress level sometimes is, very, very high. But that's why that's why everybody laughs, because they tell me I wear the white shirt with the bugles on my shirt. My stress level is going to be high, and those things happen. I'm sure you probably get that as well.
Yeah.
Um, well, before we end, one of the questions that I always want to ask is, and you've already kind of hit on it, but how do this being an ICC platform, how do you engage with the International Code Council?
Yeah, really getting to know who ICC, what ICC is, how they're, helpful to the communities of code professionals, what their focus, their area of focus is. When folks say, I just don't know, well, you know what? Just like we jump up and look up, how to build a house,
Hmm.
how to put a card together, let's go ahead and find out who they are. Really get to know your board of directors, get to know the different committees, get to know the different types of resources that ICC offers, and get to know your region, right? Who
Yes.
your region reps are, who the region members are, make those connections, see if you can establish, those friendships and really be able to, build on those and breathe life into those different types of
Yep.
relationships that you have, not just have a number and put it in your pocket and never use it, but really engage. Hey, Tim, how are you? I haven't heard from you for like 2 weeks. How's things going? How you holding up?
Yep.
It goes a long way. I think that ICC, like I said, when I went to ABM, I was like a little kid at a candy store, and I always say that because it was true. I knew maybe the surface of ICC before really going and getting a real in-depth look, and I left feeling like, wow, this is exactly why I'm a member. This is exactly why I'm a part of this organization, because they really go out of their way to help out the membership and to provide the resources. But again, it goes back to the accountability on our part, right?
Hmm.
Getting to know who they are, seeking out their resources, making the connections, making the phone calls,
Right.
and really getting to know what's out there that could be of assistance to us and our staff.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned earlier about knowing where to go to get my code books, to knowing where I could give my certification exam. I knew all of that, but I wasn't aware until probably 3 years ago. I didn't even know anything about a region, and so then it was nice to, what one of my mentors, and I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say, and one of my close friends, Mike Payton out of Modesto. He's the one that got me involved in the region, and and he is one of my phone friends. He and I talk on a very frequent basis, and so it's one of those things that you just reach out and see how things are going, and hope all is well. And we try to help each other out as time goes on. So,
Right.
um, before we end, how can people get in contact with you? I know you said you're very active on LinkedIn, but how can people find you and maybe use you as a lifeline, or have questions and maybe want to contact you?
Absolutely, yes. So LinkedIn is one, but I also have an email address that we can provide. So it'll be cceci.muela, Muela, 20 @gmail.com. I also am a part of the Standards and Codes Academy. So if you go on to standardsandcodesacademy.com, there's a contact page there for me as well. You can definitely use that and contact me for anything that you may need. If I could give you a resource, if I could go ahead and provide any type of feedback, any opinions on perhaps anything that you're wanting to take on, that would be great. You said a great thing, Tim. You have your mentor who is a friend. I think the beauty of what we do as code professionals is building our village, because
Yep,
eventually those folks become our good friends, and now you have a
absolutely.
friend for life. So yeah, reach out anytime. Whatever I can do to assist, I'm more than happy to do so.
All right. Appreciate it. You have been very gracious with your time, and I appreciate it. And I will say hello when I see you in Pittsburgh. I'm flying out on Saturday. I'm looking forward to it. I'll probably see you during the, maybe on Sunday. I think Sunday is the
Great.
kickoff for
Hmm.
the ABM. Very excited. The code hearings, they are the code hearings. I'm going to be as excited as I can be. I'm not one to sit still for very long, and that's the challenge for me. So, but yes, and I will say that the time change, the losing 3 hours is probably going to be a little rough for the first couple days, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, it'll be a great time, and you know what? I'm looking forward to making more friends. So if you're out there, I'll probably say hi.
Yes, yes,
I'll be
yes.
that weird lady that says, "Hey, how are you? My name's Cece. Nice to meet you." But know that I have good intentions.
Well, I appreciate it, and I will definitely say hello when I see you at the ABM. I hope you have a good rest of your trip in Washington. And again, I thank you for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tim, for having me. It's been an honor. And again, I look forward to seeing you over the weekend.
Absolutely. All right.
All right.
Have a
Take
great
care.
rest of your day.
See ya. Thanks, Tim. You too. Bye bye.